All right, great evening, everyone, and welcome to the Logos Connection Conversations That Heal. Tonight, we have a special guest author, Maurice Lamar Mitchell, and we're going to talk tonight about childhood trauma from a man's perspective. We hear a lot about trauma from a woman's perspective. We hear about those trauma victims that have experienced trauma as a result of combat, in particular during the Vietnam War, or those that came back from the Vietnam War. But very seldom do we talk about the experience of your average man living in the city or living in the suburbs, wherever you are, and how you were traumatized by a particular event. So tonight we're going to have that conversation. Just to warn you, it is intense. And if you have children around, you may not want to have them near you because there is some very adult content that we're going to talk about. So let's open up with prayer, and then we're going to delve right in. Father, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this day. Thank you for the gift of life. Thank you for my brother Maurice. Thank you for his courage to write his story and to share his story and even to talk about it tonight. It is my prayer that lives are touched, lives are changed, and lives are impacted for your glory as we talk about trauma and childhood trauma tonight. We bless you and we give you glory in Jesus' name. Amen. Well,
Amen.
Maurice, as I call you, Mo, welcome, man. It's a privilege to
Thank
be
you.
with you. Thank you for consenting. I know that this is not easy for you.
It is
And
not.
as I said to you, I know that based upon the content of your book, I know that it was intense for me reading it. So I can only imagine how intense it was having to write it and relive those experiences. So thank you for the courage to share your story. But I also want to thank you, as I said to you in a text message, I want to thank you for not giving up on life, because if you had given up, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So thank you for hanging in there, because your story needs to be told. So thank you. How are
Thank
you?
you. I'm great. I appreciate you for reaching out to me. Thank you for having me. Thank you for that text message. It kind of messed me up in a good way, because it made me reflect on my life and all of the things that I have endured and all of the things that I have overcome and all of the things that I was so quiet about for so long
Yeah.
that pushed me to where I am today. So thank you for having me, and I'm honored. It is not an easy topic. My book is not an easy discussion, but
No,
it is
sir.
my life.
Yeah.
It is my journey. It is my truth. It is my life. So I couldn't just deny what happened, and I couldn't deny the truths that are a part of my life, because I knew at some point of writing that it would help other people, that it would help someone that had gone through or that may be going through the same things that I faced in my life from childhood to adulthood.
I am absolutely convinced that your story will change lives. So
Thank
I
you.
am
Thank you.
excited and interested to see, how people will be changed and impacted by your transparency.
Thank you.
Because it's probably one of the most transparent memoirs I've ever read in my life. If I'm not mistaken, you said that this book was the result of a journal that you've been writing since you were a teenager, if not
Yeah,
before, correct?
I always kept a journal. I always used writing as my way of just therapeutically dealing with everything. I didn't talk a lot because of the things that I went through as a child. It kind of caged me in, and I used writing to get through a lot of it. Singing, music, and writing like literally saved like my life.
Wow. Wow. So let's dive into this. Let me ask you this question. How necessary are conversations like these in general? And to take it a step further, how necessary are these conversations in the African American community, and why?
In general, they're important because there are a lot of people who are afraid to come forth with their story. There are a lot of people who they feel like they're not ready to deal with it. And I'm a witness to that. So that's how I can speak on it. I felt like I wasn't ready. I felt afraid. I felt like I would be judged. I felt like, I don't know, probably not, just cast like a castaway, but I felt like not many people would understand the things that I dealt with and that I faced, and they wouldn't know how to deal with me in that aspect. And you mentioned the African American community. Um, a lot of times, I don't know, I feel like just as a people, we've always been in survival mode. Like
Yeah.
we've always been, I don't know, I'm going to get through it however I get through it. And going back to slavery, there were a lot of things that were done to the slaves by the masters that the slaves didn't talk about, that they
Right.
had to keep quiet or they would die. So I believe that mentality just went into generation after generation after generation of just being closed, and keeping secrets, family secrets, and just keeping things in. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
yeah.
It's interesting because I was on a meeting this afternoon and we were talking. There are studies in psychology that prove that trauma affects generations. It's called
Oh, oh,
epigenetics.
oh
So
yeah.
that the effects of the trauma are passed down.
Oh yeah.
So that's powerful what you said. So let me ask you this. Your book was published September of last year. Is that correct?
September 2020. Yeah.
Okay. So your story begins as an 8-year-old you, right? What
Yes.
prompted you to write your book last year? So, there's between the 8-year-old you and you're 40 now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a 30 over 30-year difference. What
Yeah.
prompted you to wait that long to write it? Or was there something significant about 2020 in terms of making sure it got out at that time? What was your train of thought? What's going on there?
Um, there wasn't anything significant about 2020 that made me want to get it out in 2020 per se. 2020 just so happened to allow me the time, um, because as an essential worker, a lot of times we didn't have time off, but there were days where we did have time off. And in those days, I had time to write. So that's why it was just, I forced myself to write in those days. I actually started the book in 2013.
Wow.
In 2013, I had started my book. Long story short, I was in surgical technology school and I would always take my hard drive with me because prior to that, my hard drive crashed. I would take my USB with me because my computer hard drive crashed. It had all my poetry on it from like 97 on up. It had the start of my book.
Wow.
It had everything. So it crashed. And so I had it saved on a USB. Coming out of class, um, I looked down. I don't know why I looked down, but I looked down and there was my USB crushed, crashed, broken up. Someone had ran it over. All of my everything was in there, the start of my book. So I was discouraged. So it took me like years
Wow.
because I thought that I was onto something. I was ready to talk about it. I was just in it to win it. And then that happened. I was like, okay, so nope, I'm not doing this. And so in 2017, I started writing it and I still have the page saved. It was one paragraph and that was it. And I could not write. I don't know. It was just too much for me at that time. So 2018 is when I actually started the book. Um, Going from being a journal, and I realized that it could help other people. So I turned it into book form in 2018, and then it took me 2 years to write. Working full
Wow.
time, and with the kids and everything that I was dealing with on the family end of things, it took me 2 years. So
Wow.
yeah,
I'm glad you finally put pen to paper and executed it.
man, I was messed up when that flash drive got crushed.
I can imagine. I
I
can
was messed
imagine.
up. I was
But you
depressed.
wow. But you know what? It was time. This was the perfect time.
Yeah,
You know,
everything happens for a reason.
absolutely. So
So
in your story, as I told you, I got your book on Monday and I'm already on page 240 something.
mm,
And I didn't even read much. I didn't read any today. So that tells you how quickly I went through the book. So there were two moments in your story that I believe that you were robbed of the gift of choice. Once
yeah.
at 8 and once at 20. So let's start at age 8. What happened at age 8 that changed the trajectory of your life?
Um, I believe, and I called it my treasure, being my innocence. I was robbed of it. This man made up in his mind that I wasn't worth normal life. That's how I looked at it. Um, he used a selfish agenda to please himself sexually with an 8-year-old boy being me as a grown man. And that literally, at the time, I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it was, what was happening. All I knew was I was afraid. All I knew that I couldn't really be myself. because I was just so nervous all the time. At that time, I didn't know it was anxiety. You know, I didn't know that I realized that I was going through all these things as an 8-year-old boy, all because an adult male made a decision to remove my innocence from me without my choice. And it was just so traumatic. And so the only reason I think I can talk about it now without breaking down is because I've gone through so many different psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and social workers and nurses and doctors that because at first I would always have an anxiety attack and I would break down and cry with every discussion because of it. And holding it in as long as I did for 27 years, holding it in every day, dealing with it by myself alone, literally every day, literally drove me crazy. So in that aspect, I just think that, I don't know, I don't know what made him think that that was, or what makes any adult think that it's fine.
Absolutely.
I absolutely want to be an advocate for those children who have faced it, who are dealing with it, and also to the adult men and women who have not discussed the things that they went through that was so traumatic as children. You know, I do want to be an advocate for them. I do want to speak loud for them because it's still happening, sadly. And I do want those people to be, you know, I don't know, talk to just so they can begin healing like I had begun my healing. You know, they deserve that, you know. Yeah. And at 20, you're talking about the book. So
Yeah.
for those of you who have not read my book, you need to go purchase it on Amazon. If you search Maurice Mitchell in the search box, it'll come up. I don't want to give too much away, but I will give enough away. When I was 20, there was a choice made by someone. It was not my girlfriend at the time, but it was my best friend. And we ended up having a child. But before the child came, before my daughter came, um, and a lot of times as men, we want to just like play the blame game, and you know, women too. But I could have easily just blamed her for her choice, and I won't say trapping, but that's what we called it back then. You know, you trap someone in a pregnancy because you want to be with them and all this, and that's what it was. But at the same time, I should have been prepared, you know, if that was something that was being indulged in. And my grandmother and my mother made a joke about it after I called them. And they said, your other brothers would be ready. They probably sleep with condoms under their pillow.
I
You
read
know,
that.
I said, yeah. My mom said, I knew you wasn't going to be ready. So I just wasn't prepared. So I can't just totally blame her for that. I do take my ownership. And if I could be realistic and say what I want to say without being too vulgar, you know, sometimes, I mean, I was lost in the sauce. I was, as Usher said, you know, you just don't think about it at the time, you know,
Right.
what could come up later, but it happens, and, you know, it
Could
did
you
affect me.
could you tell, just kind of summarize that story about, you know, how that, or not necessarily the event, but what you found out at the end of the pregnancy, what she shared with you?
Oh, so there in the book I did mention, and it has been proven through other family members, but not that I would ever lie about it, but you know, some people might be like, oh, that ain't true, but it is true. Um, Wait, let me make sure which part you're talking about, because I could go off into
I'm
something
talking specifically about the trapping, you know, what she said about that, what she told you.
as far as getting help with it.
Yes.
Oh,
About getting it at the right time and all that stuff.
oh yeah, yeah. And that was something I didn't even know about at 20, that, you know, women, and well, I knew about the ovulation, but I didn't
Right.
know that it could be timed like that. So she had a cousin that informed her on the timing of ovulation and when it would be a good time to get pregnant and all this stuff. And then later on, it came out, and she actually talked to me about it. And that literally hurt me like none other. We were best friends at the time. Um, And it was just an event, I'll call it an event, that literally changed the direction of my life. Not that now, of course, I don't mind it because my daughter is a blessing, to me in my heart, and I love her. But at that time, as a 20-year-old, it was
Yeah.
just a lot for me to take in, that now I have to stop going to school because I need a job now. And I have to like just take into consideration an entire, like somebody else's life. Like I'm in charge of a life now, because someone else made a decision that they wanted, something that I necessarily didn't ask for. So that's what happened at 8. And then that's what happened at 20, of people just like making decisions for me without, my consent. So yeah.
Wow. So going back to age 8, what were the immediate effects of that traumatic experience? Because that was trauma. So what were the immediate effects of that?
I found myself shut down a lot as a kid, especially in my alone time. But
Mhm.
then I used a defense mechanism, which at the time, of course, I didn't know it was a defense mechanism. But later on, as an adult, I realized that it was a defense mechanism that I was using, which is jokes. I became like the jokester that everybody wanted to be around. I became the class clown. Whatever I could do to keep those thoughts away from me, that's what I did. I did good in school. I got great grades, but at the same time, I never wanted to continue thinking about the daily thoughts that just tore up my spirit on the inside. Every day I would have the reminders of what he did to me, of how he got me to trust him, and the things that he said to me to kind of just like lure me into the trust. And on a daily basis, I just dealt with it the best that I could. And it was through music, it was through singing, and it was through jokes. So that was the immediate effect. I just developed these different defense mechanisms so that I didn't have to deal with it. Because even at the age of 8, I knew in my family, one of my crazy cousins was going to kill this man. One of my uncles was going to kill this man. I knew that at the age of 8. And even going forward, when I had my first panic attack slash anxiety attack before I went into the hospital, my mom and I, we were crying, and I was telling her everything that was happening to me. And I was just breaking down. And while we were crying and hugging, I said, "Ma, I knew somebody would kill him." And she's in the midst of her crying, she said, "You're right, baby. Somebody would have killed him." And I knew that at 8 years old. And instead of coming forth to protect myself, I, to this day, I cannot tell you why I protected this man from dying. It just didn't seem right to have somebody die in my 8-year-old mind. I remember watching the movies and people getting shot and killed, and it was just, that was traumatic within itself, but it being real life, I couldn't be the reason. I didn't want to be the reason why somebody died. And then I thought to myself, if they kill him, they're going to end up in jail. So then I'm the reason that
Wow.
somebody's dead. I'm the reason that somebody's in jail. I didn't want to be the reason. So that was a lot of
Wow.
a lot to do with why I kept it in for so long. I just didn't want to be that person, you know.
That's an enormous weight.
It is, it
That's
is.
enormous weight. When I read that portion of the book, it made me think about, are you familiar with one of Maya Angelou's, I can't somebody in the neighborhood, I can't remember if it was a relative, but they molested her.
Mhm.
And when she told them, somebody in the family killed him. And so she thought that her words had killed him.
Wow.
So she became a mute.
That's
And
exactly
so
what happened to
for
me.
several years she stopped talking
I
because
didn't
she
become
was
you, but
afraid.
I definitely can attest to that having that type of effect on you, because it did for me. I didn't want to be that person.
That's such an enormous weight for an 8-year-old to carry. And then, just to bring some clarity to the viewers, and psychologists will tell you this, that there is for most molesters, or child molesters, I should say, there's a grooming period. So
Oh
he
yeah.
used your love of sports, he's used his proximity,
Oh yeah.
he used his ability to cut hair, and he used the fact that you and your brothers idolized him as this quintessential
Definitely.
athlete, and he used all
Definitely.
those things to groom you, to get you to that
Definitely.
point.
Definitely.
And then there's a part in the book where he tells you, don't tell anybody. So
Yeah,
not only did he rob you of your choice, but then he robbed you of your voice.
definitely. And I was so afraid of him after the molestation and after the rape. because of his stature. He stood 6'4", he was muscular, athletic, and a grown man standing 6'4" to an 8-year-old, like I don't stand, I went to admiring him to being afraid of him. So that put a more of a silencing in my voice. So yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah, it was a lot.
So so those are some of the short-term effects, anxiety, which you didn't know at that time. You kind of
Right.
withdrawing, which are all
Yes.
normal, which are normal effects of trauma. What have been some of the long-term effects of that trauma?
Um, I would say that I definitely had an identity crisis.
Mm,
Not really knowing who I was because of that trauma that happened to me. My memory was affected by it, and I didn't realize that until in recent years. Someone else that I work with was also on some of the same medication that I was taking before my anxiety and my migraines that developed. And they were also saying that their memory was affected, and I was just talking to my doctor about it at the time, and he said, yes, that could be one of the effects of the trauma that you faced. I used to brag about my memory, even as a kid. I remember my mom would always ask me for everybody's phone number. She would always ask me for everybody's birthday. Like I was the go-to person for Easter speeches. They would give me Easter speeches the day of Easter to memorize a speech, and I could memorize it that day, and my
wow.
memory continued to be that great. But
Wow.
now, for information, I literally have to take notes on everything when I used to be able to remember like everything. But events and dreams, I remember vividly. So it's just like split. Like I remember events and dreams very vividly, but information that I'm given, I have to somehow take notes on it. So my memory was affected. And then long-term effects was between high school and my college years, I developed a sexual addiction to where I dealt with my emotions and I dealt with everything and I expressed it sexually. I didn't know that that's what was happening until I look back and I'm like, I had an addiction. It was like a drug. It was literally like when I hear ex-drug addicts talk about their drug addictions, it was just the same pulling at my mind and the daily pulling at my everything. And the way I dealt with it wasn't drinking, wasn't smoking, wasn't, anything else. I dealt with it with sex. And so that was a long-term effect that just like it was depression. It was depressing later on in life because I look back and I was just like, that was literally how I dealt with my issues and my problems. And they didn't go away, and I always felt bad afterwards. I always felt like, what are you doing? But at the time, just like, people getting high, it's that moment that you need to get those thoughts away from you. You need to get those, thoughts away from your mind. So what do? You smoke, you drink, but no, it became sex for me. Um, yeah, and I think another long-term effect was the 4 mental health facilities that I was put into. So I was put into 4 different mental health facilities. Um, thank God, my brother, oh my God, my one of my older brothers, he just like, I don't know, a gem. I love all my brothers, but this brother in particular reached out to me and knew that I needed the help that I needed, um, and said, you need to go get some professional help. Because it was during a time, I think it was in 2016, um, I was literally at a point of suicide and literally killing myself, which I had been in prior years. In 2007, I remember being suicidal. In 2009, I remember being very suicidal. And ironically, those are the years that my children or my sons were born. And a lot of people don't know that's why I call them my oxygen, because they are the reason that I didn't take my life. I thought about them in those years, but in 2016, I was literally about to end my life because of the daily just thoughts and just the darkness that just overtook my mind because of the trauma, because I hadn't dealt with it. It was just year after year, day after day, it just built up to the point to where I was having migraines that caused me to pass out. I was just like, it was affecting me physically. And I just felt like I couldn't take it. You know what I mean? I just felt like I needed to end my life. That would be easier than dealing with the daily depression and the daily anxiety that I was feeling. And I I emailed my family my obituary. I had typed out my own obituary,
Wow.
because that's just the type of person I am. I was like, if it's gonna be, if it's gonna be a funeral, it's gonna be how I want it, and I'm gonna let y'all know this is what I want. This is where I want to be buried. This is who I want to sing. This is who. So in the event that I take my life, this is how I want everything. And I emailed my family members my obituary, and my brother, one of my older brothers, he called me immediately and was like, "What is going on?" And I tried to play it off, and he was like, "You don't just." I said, "People need to be prepared. Just like they life insurance. You just want to be prepared." He said, "People prepare for life insurance, but people don't just send their obituaries to their families, without there being a major issue." So that just pushed him to force me. He literally big brothered me. It was like, "No, we're going to get you some help. You need this help. You are going to a hospital tonight." And that was that moment when I realized I needed the help. So from that point, I went through 4 different mental health facilities, because each time I got out, I knew that I wasn't ready to leave, but I wanted to leave. So I said what I knew they wanted to hear, um, until I got to the end. And the last 2 health facilities, God blessed me with people who would be real with me, because I talked to therapists who gave me textbook answers. And the textbook answers, I recognized them. And I was just like, I need
Yeah.
somebody who's going to tell me that I'm wrong, or tell me that I need to do this. And God blessed me with 2 individuals in particular who told me about my life in the most real, I don't know how to describe it, but I needed it. So yeah, the long-term effect was definitely those things. And it included me being admitted to 4 different mental health facilities.
Wow. Where do
Yeah,
we go from here? So let me say kudos to your brother
yeah.
for not ridiculing you or calling you crazy or saying or minimizing your experience, your emotional
Mhm.
experience or your trauma.
Yeah.
But he recognized that you needed professional help because even in 2020, that conversation is something that's still evolving in our community because people are
Oh
still
yeah.
struggling with, there's that one side that says, we don't tell anybody our business. We'll get
Right.
through this. What
Right.
happens in our family stays here. We'll work it out. And there's the
Exactly.
other line thought is we just pray it away. Now, I
Uh,
believe in the power of prayer. I believe in it wholeheartedly. But if you read I believe is Matthew 5, it talks about Jesus ministered to 3 kinds of people: the sick, the demon possessed, and the lunatics. And the lunatics literally meant the people who were literally out of their mind. And I think many of us have had those moments where we
oh
need
yeah.
mental attention. And so
Yeah.
kudos to your brother who had the wisdom or the discernment to know my brother needs some help that we can't give him. That's a big deal. So what would you say to those families that are still in the dark ages that feel like mental health is only for crazy people?
Let me tell you this. Go get the help you need.
Yeah.
Um, if it's medication you need, get it. If it's therapy you need, get it. Because I grew up like he was saying, like you're saying, um, in the age of if you go get help, you're crazy. You know,
Mhm.
I literally heard that, like I feel like my whole life, prayed
Wow.
away. And nobody in the church, and I grew up in the church my whole life, and nobody actually, as I was growing up, they do more so today. But back then, nobody talked about mental health. Nobody talked about abuse. Nobody talked about sexual addictions. Nobody talked about the reality of life as
Mhm.
they do now. I didn't have that. So if you are dealing with anything that is causing you to have mental breakdowns, that is causing you to have depression, that is causing anxiety, that is causing anything that that is out of the norm, please, 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 please seek the help you need. Even if the first person or the first therapist or whoever you reach out to isn't the person, please continue to reach out. That's why I was in 4. um, and I I had to stay quite a while in each one. But please continue to do your research, do what you have to do, because there are people who can help you. there is a better way. And when people would tell me that in the beginning stages, I was like, yeah, right. Like, I didn't want to hear anything anybody had to say. People would always say, it's going to get better and it's going to get better. And I would just mock them in my head, like, get out my face. You don't know what you're talking about. But now that I've made it to this point and I look back, I can say things are better. Things are much better. Like, I feel so good having had those therapeutic experiences. I feel so wonderful having gotten that weight off of me. After I wrote the book and after I went through those things, I'm still healing. I have not healed completely, but I'm to the point to where I can look back and see myself as being victorious. I'm to the point where I can look back and know that I've overcome those things. I'm to the point where I can encourage other people to get the help that they need to make it in life. Because you can't, somebody told me this and I was just like, okay, like, what are you saying? I'm a weak person. It's like, you can't do this on your own. And that pushed me to be like, what you mean? Like, am I weak? Like, and sometimes we have those moments where if you hear that, you like, I can make it. I'm strong, but at some point in your life, if it gets to the point to where you actually need therapeutic assistance and medical help, please, 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 please get it. Please, I beg you to get it, because it's one thing to just let your thoughts ruminate over and over and over and over and over, but it's another thing to have someone who is trained in that area, who have gone to school and are professionals that know how to deal with mental health issues. So please, after this live, if you want to inbox me, you can. If you want to inbox Bear, I know he doesn't mind. You can get help and things will get better. And I'm not just saying it as a cliche, not just saying it to put on a t-shirt, not just saying it to be saying it. Things will actually get better for you.
I'll share this while we're talking about it. I'm actually in therapy now. My father passed away in December of 2019. We took him off life support on his 64th birthday. He expired that same day, which was 4 days after my birthday. So, normally those 2 weeks between our birthday and Christmas or the New Year, those are times for me to just kind of decompress, relax. But I spent that entire time preparing his funeral. Then I ended up eulogizing him. So I preached his funeral or eulogized him on December 30th. I was back to work on January 2nd, January 3rd. So I never gave myself that time to, adjust. So by mid-January, I was in a spot where I was not in a good place. So I knew that I needed therapy. So I've been in therapy for the past year and a half. So I vouch for therapy. I'm spirit-filled, love Jesus, I'm a serve until I die, as I often say. But I also believe in therapy. I'm not equating therapy to him, but I believe that one of the ways we get healed is through communication. And sometimes we need to communicate with a professional.
Absolutely.
So I am an advocate for therapy.
Me too. Go get it.
Yeah, I'm an advocate. And I think my bishop always says, he says, some people need an altar and some people need a couch. And so, right. So the altar is what it is. Prayer is always going to be paramount and central to who I am. But there are some things that I deal with that I need a therapist for. I need to talk to because I can't share with just anybody.
Right.
So I think, I'm an advocate for therapy, and I commend you for sharing your story about not just going through therapists, but having the courage to say, I've been institutionalized before. That's a big deal.
Nobody knew. Like, that was like on the hush. Even at work, I was off work for a long time at 1.7 months straight. Wow. And it was just, people knew about my migraines. They knew that I was having the migraines that were causing me to pass out because I passed out at work a couple times in the middle of surgery.
Wow.
And nobody knew that it was because of the compiling of the trauma and the thoughts that I never dealt with. It was just like you put a plastic ball underwater, you let your hand go, it's coming to the surface. Well, everything was coming to the surface at the same time. All the things that I was dealing with in my childhood, my marriage, just like finances, it was just all coming at me all at once. And it was just too much. And I didn't have that courage at the time. The doctors would always say, like, is there anything else that you want to tell us that would cause these migraines that cause you to pass out? Like they were like screening me for aneurysms. They were screening me. I had like a cardiologist, I had a neurologist, and they were doing all these tests when I could have just told them, hey, this is probably why, I have these 27 years of continuous thoughts and nightmares and PTSD that I developed from it. And I could have explained that to them, but I didn't have the courage then until after I got the help that I needed therapeutically. So, yeah.
This is actually, you just gave me two segues, but I want to go to the first segue because your quote, the quote that you said on page 107, this pretty much surmises what you experienced for 27 years, but it also is the narrative of many African American men. You said, keeping quiet about what I am dealing with and staying strong is a must.
It was definitely a must.
And so for you, because your choice was taken and your voice was taken, you stayed silent. And then you equated your silence to strength.
Yeah.
And all the while you were weakening and didn't know it.
Like I felt like I was tricking myself from thinking about my reality. And in my book, one of my favorite quotes, it came from a poem that I had written years ago. And I said, reality is honest. And that's some things that people don't necessarily want to confront is their own reality. Like you have a reality that you have, but then you give everyone else this form of your reality. This, you give them a fraction of who you are, but in reality, like it's your reality that's going to help you confront the things that you need to fix in your life. So I that's what helped me come to that, conclusion. I was just like, Mo, you have to deal with you. And I didn't have anybody else to blame. I couldn't put the blame on anybody else except myself because it was me who made the decision, even though it was traumatic. Even going into my adulthood, I didn't share it until I was 35 years old. From 8 to 35, I dealt with this on a daily basis and just covered it up with music and covered it up with cracking jokes and covered it up with just like, it became part of my personality. I became the funny guy. I became the guy people wanted to be around. I became this person, but nobody knew that it was just a cover up. Nobody knew that the whole time. The whole time it was a cover up.
Let me ask you this, because you already referenced it. So this month is June is PTSD Awareness Month, post-traumatic syndrome disorder. How old were you when you were diagnosed with PTSD?
Let's see. Actually, I have the paper right here. At 35.
35. Yeah. And all that stemmed from that experience as an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So I think that's important, not necessarily to highlight your struggle, but for people to understand that things that are undealt with fester. Because we have, I think in particular men, we have this mechanism, it's an unhealthy mechanism, a defense mechanism, where we file information back. And it's, you mentioned it earlier when you talked about slavery. We always had to get over it because it's a part of survival mentality.
Yeah.
And so we've passed that on to our freed children. And so we file stuff away, and then all of a sudden, like you said, it boils over at the most inopportune time. Yeah. Because there's trauma or those experiences that have never been dealt with.
Absolutely.
So, and as you deal with that, what kind of boundaries have you set to protect your mental health?
I learned over the years, I developed many trust issues over the years. One beginning when I was 8 with the man who molested and raped me. I developed trust issues, and I began talking less and less to people who just wanted information from me, just to have the information. And I knew that they wanted the information, but they didn't necessarily want to understand me. They didn't necessarily want to understand what I was dealing with. And they would sometimes belittle my trauma, you know what I mean? Without necessarily saying it, but I would notice it and I'd be like, okay, I can't talk to you no more because, whatever. Like, so I made that choice to just like stay away from um, negativity and just like people who, people just give off certain auras and you could just feel their energy. Um, Sometimes negative people would just like give me anxiety and I would automatically just shut down. So it caused another shutdown, not only from when I was 8, but into my adulthood, because I trusted so many people because I'm like, what would anybody like, what would they gain from like telling my business or spreading this and spreading that and talking about this? But it happened, from people that I called bro or people that I hugged and called sis, they having conversations about me because it's getting back to me. And then how it's just like a wildfire, okay, Mo was going through this, but don't tell nobody. And then that person is telling somebody, oh, but don't tell nobody. He dealt with this in college, and he had his sexual addiction. So you must. And it was just these, just like, I don't know. It just like pushed me away from, like, my circle went from like this to like, I don't even. I don't even know if it's a circle anymore. I don't even know if it makes a full circle. So I had to make that decision because, I mean, people are crazy. I'm just going to say it. And they have these selfish agendas that I got the information first, kind of a thing. I found out first. Mo told me first. So let me, and this is just not just a scenario. These are things that actually happened to me from people that I trusted. And some people still to this day do not know that I know that they were the ones who started this stuff. And I still go on and be like, you know what? They were like, well, why you ain't call me? Well, because you start stuff and, yeah, I went through my phone and literally deleted, I don't know, last year, because we had time during
Right,
2020.
right.
we had time. I went through my phone and just hit like delete, 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 you're negative, delete, you did this, delete, delete. And it literally helped my anxiety and my stress ease up a little bit when I didn't have those people to deal with. Because when you get a when I get text messages and calls from people I don't recognize, I screen my phone calls. I'm like, you leave me a message, let me know who you are. I'm not just gonna pick up. Sorry for people, but that's just what I do. So now when someone calls me from an unknown number or texts me from an unknown number, I'm like, well, you must have been you must have been one of the ones that got deleted. So yeah, that helped me a lot. Yeah, I had to.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. So let me ask you this question. Since we're talking about PTSD, how did growing up in a house without your father impact your PTSD, or did it not?
I don't think not having, because my father and my mother divorced when I was 7.
Okay.
Um, I don't think not having my father around contributed to the PTSD more than it did the identity crisis and the depression.
Okay.
And one of the things I know I discussed with you about is I didn't want to ever blame him, because I honor my father. Over the past 10 years, he and I have developed a wonderful relationship where we talk and
Awesome.
text and call daily. But prior to that, I would literally, like I mentioned it in the book, as an 8-year-old, I would cry out like, where is my daddy? Like, if my daddy was here, this man wouldn't be, molesting me. If my daddy was here, I wouldn't be going through, if my dad. But then I had to realize all that time that I spent blaming him, I could have used that time to work on my own mental health, to work on my own thought process, to work on. So I encourage everyone who may be dealing with not having a father there, as traumatic as it is, and it does affect you. I'm not saying that it doesn't affect you, but I had to get to a point where I stopped blaming him because he had his own issues. And I'll testify for him. He's an ex-drug addict. He was delivered from that.
Thank God.
And so I'm grateful for that. Everybody, we all have our individual walks that we have to go through. And the older I got, I realized that was his walk. That was what he had to deal with. That was what he had to go through. So I had no right to necessarily blame him for the things that he had to go through and how he dealt with it. It would have been nice for him to be there. It would have been nice to have a father in the home, but I realized blaming him all those years did nothing for me.
Right.
It didn't encourage me.
Right.
It didn't strengthen me. It did nothing but push me further into depression. It did nothing but make me more suicidal. It did not help me at all. So I had to get away from the blame game and say, hey, Mo, this is what it is. It's you. Deal with it. And I had a quote. I dated this 11/21 of 2016. One of the mental health facilities had a fear as an acronym, and it said it has two meanings. You can either forget everything and run, fear, or you can face everything and rise. So that stuck with me. And I said, I'm just going to have to face my own life situations, my own circumstances as a man and grow up, and just be who I am and be the strongest man that I could be, especially for my children. They're looking at me. I have to make it. I have to survive. There is no giving up. There is no way I can tell them not to give up and then I give up. So I needed to be that example. So that's another reason why I call my children my oxygen. Like, I feel like metaphorically speaking, I can't breathe without them because they are the reason that I didn't commit suicide those times where I almost literally ended my life. And so I don't know. I don't want to put that on him, but the PTSD definitely came from the nightmares that I was having. I would really, really have bad, horrible, dark thoughts as a kid and as a teenager, and it would just literally wake me up out of my sleep, and I would see myself in my dream as the 8-year-old fighting the guy that was doing those things to me, and it would happen physically. I was monitored in the mental health facilities, and I was told that I was punching, and I was hitting walls, and I was everything that I needed to deal with then was coming out in those moments. And I was like, am I crazy? Like, in those moments, I had to like check myself, like, wait. I did what? I woke up with what? And then I mentioned in the book, I remember when I was my first mental health facility, I remember waking up, not knowing where I was, not knowing what was going on, not knowing the effects of anxiety attacks and panic attacks. And the nurse literally, I thought she was playing a joke because she asked, all she asked me was my name. And I was laying down. That's all she asked. She said, I need to know your first and last name and your date of birth, just so I can give you your medication. And I remember not remembering my name. And it was at that point where I knew, I began to panic, and she saw it because I began to sweat. And she said, it's okay, sweetie. It's okay. It's okay. Just get some rest. And I remember sitting up and tears just started rolling down my face because I could not remember my name. And I remember, I said, I don't ever want to have that much pressure on my mind and in my thoughts. And I never want to get to that point again. So I promised myself, whatever it takes to heal, whatever it takes to get over anxiety, whatever it takes to get over depression. So now when depression tries to come, not that I am a depression ninja, but I know how to combat it better. You know what I mean? I know how to attack it. I know how to attack anxiety now. Back then I had no clue because I had held it in for so long. So yeah.
That's heavy. That's heavy. So really, because you try to suppress those painful memories, it
I
impacted the
did
rest
suppress
of your brain. So you
them.
so you suppressed those painful memories, but in doing so, you also suppress some other brain functions
Oh yeah.
inadvertently.
Because physically, like I was saying, spiritually and emotionally, I thought I had it covered. With growing up in the
Wow.
church, I thought I had it covered. But physically, my body was like, wait, this is too much. 27 years of the same thoughts and the same suicidal thoughts and the same nightmares and the same, just all this stuff happening over and over for 27 years. My brain literally just exploded.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. So how does your 8-year-old experience, your experience as an 8-year-old boy, how does that inform the way that you parent your children?
Um, when my book first came out, I had to have a conversation with them because obviously they didn't know what happened to me as a child, but I was real with them. And after I talked to them, my daughter looked at me and she's like, "It makes sense." And she went back to, when they were younger. Anytime they went anywhere, I would always ask them when they could talk, who was there? Did anybody say anything to you? Did anybody ask you to sit on their lap? Who I would ask them these questions because in my mind, I don't trust with my kids. Oh, I don't trust you because I thought I could trust the man that molested me, that literally physically penetrated my 8-year-old body. I thought I could trust him.
Wow.
My family thought that they could trust him. So I don't trust nobody. To this day, my kids know the doctor is the only person that need to see you naked. The only person. So it affected them in the way that, they can look back now and say, "Dad, I remember you asking us all these questions, every time we went somewhere, even at school. I would say, did anybody say anything inappropriate to you? How did the substitute teacher, just any, you just never know the effects that an adult could have on a kid's life when you're not around. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
I would always I would just run it down. Like, did somebody do this? Did somebody ask you this? And so it affected it in the way that I didn't want them to develop trust issues. So I was careful. I didn't word it as you can't trust everybody. I didn't word it like that, but I would ask them enough to feel like, okay, they're fine, they're safe. Nobody did anything to them. So yeah, that's just one
Wow.
aspect of it. I could go on.
Wow. So this is my last question. We talked about this the other night, just you and I think this is where one of the reasons why it's important for parents to have a prayer life.
Yeah.
You know, what advice would you give to parents about listening, discerning, and paying attention to your children and deviant behaviors?
Um, don't lose focus of I don't know the behavior changes of your children. Because people say, "Oh, I know my kids," but then you get to the school and you're like, "Oh, I know Junior and do that. Junior did not," but then you find out Junior really did do it.
Right,
So it's
right,
just like
right.
you think your kids 100% when some of the time you really do not know that they are capable or that they would act out in this way or that they would not tell you some things or that they would keep secrets and that they would hold things in. So I would say just don't lose focus of those behavioral patterns, even in school, with relationships, and dealing with how they handle their emotions. Just pay close attention to everything. And I talk to my kids every day about like just how you feeling today. Even questions like
Mhm.
that, you can tell, you know, a lot from just asking someone how they're feeling today. Because, and I'll tell you this is a side note, but all the times that I was dealing with the trauma, people would ask me, "How are you doing?" And I never answered them, and nobody ever caught on, except one lady. People would be like, "How you doing, Maurice?" And I'll be like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And they would answer me, but they would never notice that I'd never answered them and telling them how I was feeling. So sometimes we can do the distraction thing, to try to just like, veer off
Yeah.
from what's the main subject. So I try to make sure that I tell my kids that they can trust me. So develop a trust with your kids, and be real. Like, there are so many people that will be more real with your kids than you, and you don't want them to be the first person to tell them about sex. You don't want to be them to be the first person to tell them the do's and don'ts. You don't want someone else to be the first. So I talk to my kids about everything. That's the conversation that you probably don't want to have, especially for those fathers who have daughters. My daughter is 19 now, but we talk. Like, we talk, and my sons are 14, and Landon will be 12. Like, we talk. I talk to them about everything from, I don't, but everything. So it's really important that we find that relationship value between ourselves and our children, so that they know that they can always come to you first, before they talk to a principal, a teacher, their best friends, which is normal for them to talk to their friends sometimes first.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
but in doing that, they should also have that just comfort in coming to you as their parent. Say, hey, dad, or hey, mom, I was just thinking, like, what, that comfortability is so important so that you can pin in on whether or not something is going on with your child. You are going to know. In the book, I mentioned, like, my mom would always ask me what's wrong. She knew something was wrong. Like, she would always, hey, she would always ask me, but I would always veer off and say, I'm all right. Because in my mind, I knew that I was going to be all right in my mind, but everything wasn't necessarily all right at the time. So just pay
Wow.
attention and try not to lose focus of the different behavior patterns of your children. Yeah.
That's good. And I think, when we had our session on Monday with the 10 fathers, which of course you were a part of that, which was
Yeah.
incredible. I'm still like on cloud nine because of that.
Yeah. That was an amazing.
But it was incredible. But Brian Carroll, his name on face on IG is Super Carroll because he does motivational speaking. But he says something. He said, we always think about protecting our children physically. He said, but one of the greatest forms of protection is emotional protection.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think one of the things that I think parents may fail to do, and it's unintentional, because there are a lot of people that have the frame of mind, as long as I provide for you, you have a place to live, I've done my
Right.
job.
Right.
But speak to the need to be a guardian of your children's emotional well-being.
Oh, yeah. They definitely need that support in all aspects. Because, and then people are, I think, kind of leery of getting therapeutic help for their children because they feel like, oh, I'm the parent. I know what my kids need and I know what my children need, and they can always come to me. Yes, but sometimes, and I'm saying this carefully, sometimes it's good for them if they're not coming to you. If you feel like it's something that they're not telling you, sometimes it's good for somebody else to ask them, being an adult that you trust professionally, because there are child psychologists and there are child therapists who can get certain information out of children because they're professionally trained to do so. And then you'll find out that, maybe I'm not the person to get this out of my children, or that, for them to come forth. So don't be afraid to reach out for therapy for yourself. And if you feel like your children need it, reach out for them, because it's all about healing. It's all about getting better. It's all about fixing our lives to the point that we can help somebody else. And that's what I'm hoping that I'm doing with my story. Not to just get it out there or not to make money, but to actually help someone else heal from some traumatic experiences that they may feel like they can't talk about or express. So
Well, I want to commend you again. I respect you. I honor you. I salute you
thank
for your
you.
courage.
Thank
Share
you.
your story. I'm proud of you. Just so you know,
Thank
I'm
you.
proud of you.
Thank
And
you.
again, thank you for not giving up. Thank you for buckling down and deciding I want to live. Thank you. Yeah,
Ooh,
thank you.
ooh.
So
I'm just
what I'm
listening.
gonna what I'm gonna ask you to do is I'm gonna ask you to pray for parents and also pray for people who may be watching who've dealt with any type of trauma.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
pray if you would.
Now we pray, God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time, this day, and this hour. We thank you for all of your many blessings. We don't take them for granted. God, there are people who are on this live who may be dealing with traumatic experiences, who have dealt with traumatic experiences. There may be parents who have children who are dealing with traumatic experiences. God, we pray that you will give them the strength, the courage, the wisdom, the know-how to get the help that they desire, that they need to make it in this life. Let suicide not be the answer. In Jesus' name, God, we pray that you would just continuously lead and guide them in the
Yes,
right
Lord.
direction, to the right people, to the right therapist, to the right facility that can give them the encouragement and the help that they desire, that they desperately need. We believe that it is possible. We know that we can do it. We know that you're able, and we believe you beyond our beliefs. And we believe you, God, that you will do it. In Jesus' name, we thank you. Amen.
Amen. Mo, thank you for such a fervent prayer. Now let everybody know, first of all, you have a new book out.
I
So
do.
tell them about your two books
So
and where they can get them.
this is The Great Endurance. my journey,
Heavy,
my truth, my life. Now, what is
heavy,
your opinion? What is your opinion
heavy.
of the book? Like,
So when I was reading the book, like I was almost feeling the emotions that you were feeling. Like, the little boy, I was feeling panicky. I was feeling like, oh no, not the little boy. I could feel your fear. I could identify with,
wow,
the idea of being, because we're taught boys don't cry. They'll
right,
say to us, man up.
right,
So I can identify with that idea of, I'm a man, I'm supposed to be strong, I'm not supposed to cry. And if I do cry, that's a sign of weakness. So I have to make sure that nobody perceives me as being weak or
exactly,
soft. And
exactly.
so, like I developed some of the people don't know this about me, but I was a class clown at one point in time, so that was
What?
one of my, yeah, I was a class clown. Not only that, I had an anger problem at one time. So I could identify with some of the things. And not only that, I could identify with the the idea of not knowing who I could be safe around in terms of sharing my thoughts, sharing my
Right,
feelings, because
right.
it wasn't permissible for boys to say how they feel
It wasn't.
unless it was anger or happiness about sports or an attraction to a
Right.
girl. But other than that, we weren't allowed to feel. So I could feel that trauma. And then college life. Of course that age is interesting.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that college life I could identify with. The sexual addiction. I could identify with that. Um, I could also identify with being like you feel like you can't trust anybody.
Oh yeah.
So reading your book, it was an emotional journey. It was like, this is really serious. So if you have a weak stomach, not a weak stomach, if you're emotionally weak, you might not want to read this book because it's going to take you through. But it's a great read, and actually, I think even though it's read for the everyday person, it's not lofty, it's very down to earth, very engaging.
Yeah.
It's a page turner. But I also believe that the emotional impact of this book and your emotional experience could be a great case study for psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists.
Wow.
So that's my
Wow.
take on the book.
I would actually like that. For the sake of time, I will talk about my new children's book. Um, the reason why I think I wrote this children's book, it actually came to me in a dream
Hmm.
last year. I think it was like September, October. I have it in my phone. The date was timestamped because I had the dream, and immediately after my dream, because I dreamt I was reading this book to a group of children. Um, I didn't vividly get every word in the dream, but the start of the book and I don't know, the tone of the book came in the dream. And I immediately woke up at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got my phone out and I just began to take the notes of the book. And I realized that there are children who don't know or don't feel the confidence that they need, or they don't have the self-esteem that they need, or they don't feel driven. So I wrote this book for children to feel confidence and to feel like they are winners, despite what they're going through, despite it. I mean, they may be dealing with some traumatic experiences that the parents right now don't know about, but I want them to feel encouraged. I want them to feel like they are champions, that they are winners despite what they face, despite what they go through. I wrote in this book, there's lessons about bullying. There's lessons about not giving up in
Nice.
school. There's lessons about family life. There's lessons about being honest. All of that is in this book so that children can know that literally they are winners, they are champions, and they can get through anything. So it's like a self-esteem building, confidence building, I can do anything type of a book for children. So yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Now,
yeah.
tell the viewers where they can find your books again.
So you can go to Amazon. If you type in Maurice Mitchell in the search, both of my books will come up. You can go to my website, mauricelmitchell.com. And there's also click links that'll direct you right to Amazon, and you can purchase them from there. So I want to thank you for having me. Thank
My
everyone
pleasure,
for
man.
watching, for all of your support, all of the love, all of the text, emails, comments, likes, all of it. I don't want it for my attention, but I want it to bring attention to the issues that are in my book. And I want it to just address certain things that a lot of people feel uncomfortable talking about. even in church. And you haven't gotten to that part in my book yet, so I don't want
Oh
to talk about
boy.
it. But
Oh boy.
I addressed that part too. Yeah, so I won't get into that. But we as a people, not just African American, but just like people in general of every race, we need to find that, I don't know, that level of trust with someone, whether it be a therapist, whether it be a family member, who will just listen. And what I found out through my experiences with therapy is you just need someone to listen. You know, there are a lot of
Yes.
times that people will give advice and they'll talk after you talk, and because they think they know, and then they give you this, and you need to do this, and you don't need to do this, and you need to stop doing this. But then I found a therapist who, he was a psychiatrist, who listened to me. And then when he listened to me, like it was just so refreshing. It was just like, here's somebody who cares. I felt like he cared because he listened to me and wasn't just giving me textbook answers and wasn't giving me his opinion of what I should be doing in my life. And so just find somebody who will actually listen to your heart, who will listen to the deep treasures of who you are that you've been keeping in, you know. So just look, research, do all that you can to find help, to get help, because there's help out there. If you're dealing with PTSD, what else? I was diagnosed with major depression disorder. So I was diagnosed with MDD at the same time that I was diagnosed with PTSD. And yeah, it was a lot. So find help because there is help out there. So I can't express that enough. And after you read my book, it starts off rough, but it ends well. Why? Because I'm here and I'm a testimony,
Thank
and
God.
I'm a light to, and it just is not me bragging. This is me. If I am bragging, I'm bragging on my survival and my resilience of not giving up, because I wanted to give up. I didn't want to listen to anybody. And this is another thing. When your kids, or if anybody you know starts that I don't care stuff, saying I don't care sounds light, but it can be really dangerous, because the moment that I stopped caring about myself, my life, is when I started having the suicidal thoughts and the more traumatic experiences mentally. But in the same token, oh, no, I won't get into that. I'll wait because you haven't finished the book. So I'll just wait. We'll come back for part 2 after you
Okay,
finish
we'll
the
do
book.
part 2 after I finish reading. We can do
We'll come
that
back. Yeah,
after I finish reading.
we'll come back.
So I'm gonna hold you to that.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Well,
We'll
I'll
come
hold
back
you to that. I
after we
do.
finish.
You said something. You said something to me Monday night after you got off the call. That really was refreshing to me. You said that even though it was virtual, you said that conversation was a safe place.
Yeah,
Um, and so the reason I'm bringing that up, because I think everybody needs a safe place
that
where
safe
they
place.
can divulge, where they can
Yes.
unwind, unravel, unpack. And so, for the viewers, I pray that you find your safe place.
Please find a safe place.
If it's a small community of people, that's nice. But if you need a therapist, I should say, or a counselor, make sure you do that, because you need a place where you feel emotionally safe. That's
Yeah,
crucial.
yeah.
Crucial.
And one thing, and it sounds minute, and it sounds like minor when people say, I don't care about what people think of me, or what they think about me. But it wasn't until that came about in my personal life that I literally felt more free to tell my story, to get the
Mm,
help that I needed, even after I had my anxiety and panic attacks, even after the 4 mental health facilities that I was in. I mean, I felt like I was in jail. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. I felt like I was inmate number 45367 4. I felt like I felt
wow.
I felt like, I mean, because we went in there and we were searched, and at one mental health facility in particular, like, they didn't want you to have anything. We couldn't have shoes on. And in the process, when they, process you to go into the facility, like, we had to get like butt naked, like, to like have like a physical, like head to toe. I just felt like I was in jail. And
Wow.
but that particular facility was the facility that I think pushed me into my freedom, that pushed me
Awesome.
into my healing. So I saw it as jail, but it was so necessary. It was so needed. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe that I was just thinking I was crazy. I was ashamed. Like in the book, you'll find out I slid the receptionist a note just because I didn't want to say it out loud. And when I got to the hospital to get the help that I needed, the first hospital, because so don't feel ashamed. Don't feel too ashamed that you can't get help. Don't feel too ashamed that you can't reach out. Don't get to a point to where you're like, oh, I'll get over it. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have these compiling of thoughts. And that at one point, there will be a breaking point. And before you get to that breaking point, just remember my voice saying, there is help out there. Remember my voice saying, there's somebody out there who cares enough about you to get you the help that you deserve, that you need, so that you can begin your healing process, so that you can get to the point in your life where you need to be.
Powerful, man. Thank you for sharing your journey and your story. Yes. And I do want to say this to those that are listening, and even to you, Maurice. Maybe 10, maybe 15 years ago, and I posted this on Facebook in a video, I was like really lamenting my life and like feeling like I was strange, awkward, and all those things. And the Lord impressed these words upon my heart. The strangeness of your story is going to bless the lives of others. And so for the people, you know, that feel like you're strange or awkward, what you're going through is unusual, somebody is going to need your story. And Maurice, I say to you that somebody needs your story. What you shared was not by accident or happenstance. Somebody's going to make a decision to live because you shared a piece of your life and you bore a part of your soul. So thank you. Again, thank you for not giving up. To the person who's watching, because you're watching, if you went through trauma, thank you for not giving up. And as Maurice said, there is help. You can inbox one of us, you know, and we'll be glad to direct you to some resources. But whatever you do, don't give up. Maurice, Mo, as I call you normally, thank you, man.
Thank you for having me.
I so appreciate you. It's been a privilege. Even though your book took me through a lot of changes, it's a great read.
Thank you.
And I applaud you for sharing your journey, your truth, and your life. To the viewers, thank you for tuning in. We will see you next Monday at 8:30 p.m. We're going to have our regular monthly prayer connect, and we're going to talk about our life post-pandemic in ministry and in church. We're going to have Bishop Alan G. Porter, Pastor Cordelia Wallace, Pastor Anthony Dix, Pastor Quentin Mumfrey. So it's going to be a great conversation. Until then, thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for the pleasure of your time, and have a good night.
Thank you, sir.